You ever get introduced to something and come out of it 30 minutes later a new person? Let me take you to the far forgotten past, like 4 months ago. A friend said, "Hey, wanna watch Transformers Prime?" And my answer to that question changed me as a human being. Cause, hey, I didn't care about all this stuff as a kid, so why not start as an adult? And now it's safe to say I'm committed. I watched all of Prime, the Prime movie, the first 3 Transformers movies that felt longer than soil erosion, read that Shattered Glass comic, and watched more G1 than I ever want to again. It's obviously not much in the grand scheme of things, but it's enough to say that I'm a new fan and I'm ready for it to ruin my life. So, because this is who I am now, I got vaguely interested in a piece of media outside of video games. Time to find out if it has a tie-in game to ruin how much I was enjoying it. I haven't made any other videos on licensed games, but ever since I played Barnyard on GameCube, I've been going through several games that are tie-ins to movies or shows, and I don't know what's worse, the fact I'm doing it in the first place or the fact that I might be enjoying myself. Seeing as it was the first Transformers thing I was exposed to, and is and probably will remain the best Transformers media I've seen, I decided to look into if Transformers Prime had any games to its name. Almost every Transformers continuity has a healthy quantity of games based on it, but because fate is cruel, Prime only got 2. One was a MOBA called Transformers Universe that was shut down less than a year after it released, and the other is an actual video game. Transformers Prime the game released for any Nintendo console that was kind of relevant at the time. It got a DS port in 2012 of all years. Which way are you going? My way. I decided to run with the Wii U version because not only is it the nicest looking, it's also the one I own. And guess who actually spent money on this? It was like $12 on a Labor Day sale at a retro game store, like you'd be able to resist. Also, just cause I have no clue where else I'd mention this while preparing for this video, I noticed the page on this game on the Transformers wiki lists multiple continuity errors with how this game fits into the show. Spoilers for Transformers Prime, so if you care, skip to the timestamp on screen. To quickly run through 2 of my favorite bits, apparently an Activision person says this game could be slogging anywhere during Season 2, but in this game Starscream's working with Megatron when he's alone for 90% of Season 2, and on top of that, in this game, Starscream transforms during his boss fight, and Dreadwing is here. But there's no part of Season 2 where Dreadwing is in the show and Starscream can't transform, because he can't transform the episode Dreadwing appears, and he gets the ability back the episode after Dreadwing dies, so yeah, wonderful. Anyway, that's all the cool pre-game stuff I found, so let's get into the action. Welcome to space! It's remarkably purple this time of year. Megatron's found a huge asteroid made of dark energon, and since that's no good, the Autobots roll onto Megatron's ship, the Nemesis, and we start with Big Man Optimus Prime. This game's a beat-em-up. You have a standard attack, a heavy attack that can break shields. You can string both of these attacks together or do like 3 combos. You can also go vehicle mode. This is amazing. There's a heavy attack you can only do out of vehicle mode, which has something kinda annoying about it, but I won't mention that until the end of the video, so don't worry about it. Finally, you can shoot lasers, which have this cool reference to the show and how they miss 90% of the time. After working through that, we destroy the Decepticons' tethers to the asteroid, and that's enough for Megatron to start throwing hands. This is the first boss fight, and they're the best parts of the game. With all the other enemies, they can swarm you and get harder as the game goes on, obviously, but there's a big divide between these little cockroaches and the Autobots beating the crap out of them. The bosses have you on an even playing field, which makes them a lot more interesting to fight, at least most of the time. Unfortunately for Megatron, though, he's the first boss, so we easily slap him around for a bit until he stops moving. Mid-fight, though, the asteroid starts breaking, and there's a dubious little creature hidden inside, and Megatron just leaves. And right in time, too, as the asteroid explodes, leaving all the Autobots to crash down to Earth. Also, this gives us our first, but certainly not the last instance of Megatron tossing Starscream around like he ain't shit. Their dynamic is pretty consistent in most of the continuities, but Prime definitely has some of the best interactions between them. Though, G1 is a close second.
You disgust me.
While everyone was in space, Ratchet was at home sitting in his gamer chair watching, and the explosion prompts him to go help. This is another cool reference to the show, where Ratchet tells the kids to stay in the hideout, and they ignore him, leading to mostly bad things. We now cut to RC, who's having some great face-on-concrete action right now. This level introduces Insecticons, who can go bug mode and fly around, which is a little bit annoying, which I feel like I would care more about if there weren't only 2 levels in the entire game. Them being hard to hit normally is already difficult considering your blaster is allergic to enemies, but thankfully Arcee's does fire a little faster than usual, so that helps. She's a little faster than Optimus and her blaster's a bit more reliable, so boom, competitive Transformers Prime game tier list because no one else is brave enough to do it. You work through literally 3 waves of enemies before getting to the boss, and now here comes Arachnid. This is where you'll get more acquainted with your shield and gamer rage meter. You can bring up your shield whenever you like, and as the bosses are sure to not take advantage of, you can move around while shielding, so it's not like you're stuck in place while using it. It makes the combat a little more interesting, but I don't use it a ton despite that, because in this type of game all I care about is violence. The shield even lets you do a parry, but again, didn't use this because I'm inept. Your gamer rage is more important though, because not only do you deal more damage, you can also do a super long combo, and your blaster is a lot stronger. While you can activate it by pressing the L button, the gamer really wants you to hit the touchscreen button, and despite being objectively more inconvenient, I still hit it sometimes. That being said, you won't be able to fully use it here, because once you get to the last fourth of Arachnid's health, Jack's here and he gets captured in less than 5 seconds. Now we get to go motorcycle mode. Oh yeah, this game's for the Wii U, isn't it? Yeah, you get the privilege of tilting the gamepad side to side to move yourself. It works fine, but here's the thing. This game has these emblems, basically achievements that unlock some stuff in the gallery, and wouldn't you know it, there's an emblem for completing this section without getting hit, and then switching directions back and forth by tilting becomes a little bit much. Aside from getting the gallery filled out, there's no reason to do this stuff, but I thought it'd be funny to go for 100%, so that's what's happening here. There's also a jump. It's a little stiff, but it works good at dodging things, and getting that emblem would be hell without it. Anyway, the next level starts with another chase sequence that has an emblem for completing it without getting hit, and there's no jump. Look, I know I do it to myself, but what are the chances, man? You can't jump because Miko found Bulkhead in this cave, and jumping while she's inside would just be irresponsible, which is why you jump when you exit the cave when she's inside you. That's fine. We get to play as Bulkhead for this one, and he's what you'd expect. Moves pretty slow, hits like an undisclosed model of SUV. His blaster doesn't rapid fire though, it's a single big shot, and with this accuracy, that ain't cutting it, but he's alright overall. This canyon level is also a good introduction to the artifacts. They serve as collectibles for this game, and there's 1 to 3 in each level. All they do is give you more gallery stuff, but I think going for these are fun anyway, because you interact with the level design more than you would otherwise. Like this level, for example, you get to find this cool shortcut in the escape sequence and go up to this little bridge. It's small, but it adds just a bit of exploration and makes for a short break in beating things up. There's a fight against Starscream that's great in showing the blasters being very funny, but it's also one of those annoying types of bosses where you wait for him to stop flying around and give you permission to attack him. While everyone else is having their world tour, Bumblebee got taken prisoner in a mine somewhere, but Raphael, I had to look up what his name was, I forgot, breaks him out, and now we get to play as the best Autobot. Bumblebee is pretty normal like Optimus, but I don't know, it feels like he doesn't hit as hard, his mid-air attack is a bit annoying to hit, and I swear his most basic attack combo is the strongest one for some reason. But none of that matters because I get to hear him make funny little beep-boop sounds, and you know what, that makes it all worth it. This level's on the longer side and introduces a number of things, mainly these exploding crystals that you can shoot from far away to blow up on enemies, or if you're like me, bait all the enemies into following you and just blow up everyone including yourself. The level structure also makes this one a bit more memorable since you end up in this central room going to side paths to blow up these generators, and then rushing back to the elevator you came in on since Raph is surrounded by Decepticons. To finish off the stage, we get a fight against our Transformers icon Knockout. He shows a kinda annoying thing with some bosses in this game, and that's sometimes their blasters always knock you back. It's not that big of a deal, I just don't want to be knocked around all the time. Other than that, he's pretty simple and has an easy pattern, so of course my monkey brain kept trying to punch his face in with no regard for said pattern. We cut to Optimus and Ratchet in a location, who find this big dude stuck in Dark Energon that Optimus recognizes as Thunderwing, a robot created by Unicron. He's like the even eviler bad guy, in case you don't know what any of the words I'm saying are. Thunderwing immediately bitch slaps Ratchet out of the way and decides to start laying his aggression out on you, except not really because his boss is super easy. Even doing the boss without getting hit wasn't that bad, though I don't really know what you expected out of a guy stuck in the ground. There's this escape sequence that happens right after the fight that's super funny to me because the game gives you 3 minutes to get to the portal, and you can easily do it in under a minute. I don't know what would cause you to run out of time here. After this level, we see that everything's coming up Megatron as he's kidnapped Thunderwing, gotten him to roll with the Decepticons in exchange for fixing him, and forces Ratchet to do it because he's kidnapped Raph and Miko, so things are going good for everyone but the Autobots. Now we're in this canyon with Bumblebee and RC investigating a Decepticon signal, but for some reason you never play as RC here. This is where I start getting a little annoyed at these sniper enemies who love running away, which creates this lame game of tag. That being said, this is also where I feel the game hits its stride, since at this point almost every enemy gets introduced and the bosses start getting more interesting. We get to Dreadwing, chilling with some of the purple stuff, which leads into another chase. Good time to mention, I wish the vehicle modes were integrated into the normal level design a bit better. You only majorly use them in these chase sequences, and while there are a couple parts in actual levels where you use the vehicles, the hallways are so big and elongated it feels like, okay, here's the part where you turn into a car. Oh yeah, I also blasted my ass off these cliffs twice like an idiot, thought that was funny. The fight against Dreadwing's pretty fun, probably because he does more than alternate between shooting and punching, and instead switches things up based on how close you are to him, which makes this a good spot to flex your shield. He also drops these bombs around, which, you know, nice for some variety, but that's also because the other fights before this have been very okay. Funny thing is, get this, after we beat Dreadwing, he never appears in the game again. If you remove this level, you would remove all appearances of Dreadwing. What's that about? Meanwhile, in these ruins, Optimus and Bulkhead find Megatron and Starscream, who found another piece for Thunderwing. These names are a mouthful, and Bulkhead isn't too jazzed about his favorite human being stolen, leaving him and Starscream to run off, giving Megatron ample time for a rematch. This is the first fight that actually feels like an intense 1v1, in the way that if you just run at Megatron, he will rip you to shreds. He's basically an upgraded version of his first fight that still can't help laughing like an idiot after getting one punch in, but things mainly pick up once he gets to the last half of his health, where he goes into permanent weed mode. Now he can also do several hit combos as laser blasts explode and he can cause a shockwave on the ground. It's cool, but honestly, I wish the bosses started off with this format, cause without it, the bosses from before this point are extremely easy, and plus, fighting bosses while you're both upgraded is fun. Check this out, I dodge him, go get a comboing, and cancel my combo with the upgraded chaining into the upgraded combo and get more damage, and meet me on netplay, bitch. When you get into the main level, you're introduced to these electricity dudes. I only think that's notable because they reminded me of the sand guys from ULTRAKILL. This level's good though, there's more platforming combined with the combat, and there's a ton of pits to throw enemies into, which amuses me way too much to be normal. But this also shows the very funny laser knockback enemies have that can send you flying down pits as easily as you can send them. The stage also had a pretty close S-rank time, let's talk about that while we're at it. This game has a ranking system based on 3 things: your time, the amount of damage you've taken, and how many electronic Doritos you've collected. You usually don't have a problem with all 3 at the same time, it's mainly one problem category in a level that'll mess you up. A nice part about the Wii U version is that you can actually see the S-rank requirements on the gamepad. Sometimes the time limit is a little tight, sometimes you don't have enough breakable objects to get your chips out of. Never the damage one though, don't know if you picked up so far, this game's kinda easy for the most part. Anyway, good time to say that, cause here comes the hardest stage in the game that also happens to be the best one in the game. After Optimus becomes one with boulders, we cut to Ratchet, who's still having a bad time, but he's able to make a quick escape when Bulkhead strolls in with a captured Starscream. So, this is our first time playing as Ratchet, and thankfully, it is also the last. So he's the Autobots medic, which means most of the time while everyone's out fighting, Ratchet's at home developing his robo-scoliosis. So what's that mean? Well, not only are his combos slow and have you pushing enemies to death, but his damage is also so pitiful I think I could beat him in a fist fight. Look at this ambulance dodging moving lasers, bro is not built for this shit. Also, the S-rank time for this stage is 17 minutes, so he might be here a while. The stage is a little higher in difficulty than the others already, with it throwing larger amounts of enemies at you and this dumb little platforming section that's the only time in the game where you jump on small platforms like this. But doing it all as the worst character in the game just adds a little extra flavor to the whole thing. There's this giant elevator you gotta go up with enemies being flung at you while defending these power cells, and it is kind of fun throwing enemies down pits, knocking them out of the air into a pit, and sometimes throwing yourself into a pit when you're a little too lost in the sauce. The level ends off on what's probably the most memorable moment of the game with the battle against Soundwave. This battle's already funny to me on a conceptual level because there's Soundwave, probably one of the most powerful, intelligent, and dangerous Decepticons, and he's fighting against Ratchet. It's also the most fleshed out boss and starts with you having to destroy generators first to get the privilege of attacking Soundwave while he's busy playing his favorite playlist. On that note, this game has some decent music, but both tracks for Soundwave's boss are super good. I'd really recommend checking them out if you have the chance. The generators have barriers on them that Raph hacks to bring them down, but what makes things interesting is the emblem that only gives you one hack to bring down each generator. It's a little hard at first, but if you're quick, sometimes you can even bring down 2 generators in a single hack, which feels really good. Once you destroy enough property, Soundwave gets mad enough to start the fight. He is no pushover. He teleports around, combos your ass, propellers at you, all his lasers are fast and do instant knockback, and by the last half, it's hard to just catch the slippery bastard. Meanwhile, while you're being slapped around, Ratchet's barely able to get his mighty pushes off, and you can only get good damage by hitting him with your giant wrench. Why a giant wrench? He has hand knives in the show, dude. Stab him! Anyway, easily the best fight in the game, but I wish other fights had a smidge more to them like this one does. The fight arena is more than a flat circle, there's a little gimmick to it, it's nice. Speaking of which, weirdly enough, the next few levels are all just bosses, and on top of that, every boss from now on are rematches, which part of me wants to say that makes sense and the other part says it's lazy. A rematch with Arachnid is first up, and this kinda shows that what characters you play as are spread out pretty unevenly. Like, RC gets a 2-minute level in this fight, Bulkhead gets pretty much the same, Ratchet gets his 1 trip through hell, and most of the stages go to Optimus and Bumblebee, which is kinda lame. The only thing that I remember from this fight is that Arachnid loves standing on these walls so you can only do damage with your garbage lasers, and getting the S-rank time here is a bit tricky because she stalls for a bit on this playing wing until you can actually attack her off of it. Next, you refight Knockout as Bumblebee, which is mainly notable for when he goes green mode and starts spinning all over the place, instantly breaking your shield. Also, come on, Knockout's a mech and gets a saw blade and Ratchet doesn't get anything, that's not cool. The cutscene after this is funny too, because I don't know what Knockout was hoping to accomplish driving into Bumblebee, but yeah, he's out of the game now. Bulkhead also gets round 2 against Starscream that goes mostly the same, except for this laser barrage move he can do. The only thing largely different is there being enemies in the arena now, but yeah, it just kinda drives home that this is how the fight should have started when it's so similar. After the fight, there's also a certified Megatron moment where he shields himself with Starscream, you love to see it. When we cut back to Bulkhead, there's another section with an extremely generous time limit that gives you 3 minutes to jump up a couple steps and walk a bit. For some reason, there's a third fight against Megatron that plays out almost exactly like the second, except he gets really mad towards the end. It doesn't really matter because he's so close to dying in the third phase anyway that he gets taken care of in a few punches, and just like that, we're at the final level. Thunderwing finally got repaired, and I forgot to mention he's been looking to destroy this thing called the Matrix, and Optimus just happens to have that, so now we gotta fight him. And yeah, it's a souped up version of his first fight. That being said, this is a much better fight considering he can actually move now, so all his moves from before are way better, and he has a couple new ones and more health. I like breaking pieces of his body, but I feel like even though it is the final boss, he had a bit too much health and things went on a smidge too long. There's a driving section on RC to deliver a weakening thing, and we slam dunk it in Thunderwing's chest, which lets Jack do the only useful thing he's done all game. This one also has a no-hit emblem. I mainly remember me looking like I'm about to pull the car over when I got near some of these rocks and this giant blast at the end that was really giving me trouble for some reason. Then it's right back into the action. Now he has 2 health bars, ooh. The first bar I think is pretty much the same as the first time, which is kind of funny if you're not the one doing it. It's not until the second bar that he has a couple more attacks and Optimus gets so pissed he goes Powerade mode until the fight's over. I'd say doing the same thing 3 times is padding, but if you're padding out a 13 level game, I don't know what to tell you. It feels more to me like they honestly had no other ideas, which is sad on 2 fronts. Firstly, because I think Thunderwing looks rad, but he doesn't do anything that impressive, and he only gets a handful of fights where only one is particularly good. Oh god, I'm describing Infinite. And secondly, he's a character exclusive to a game based on a cartoon that was still running during its release, so he is absolutely dying off. Sure enough, Thunderwing gets Tekken thrown into a volcano, and that's pretty much the end of it. If it feels like I ran to the end pretty quickly, that's cause the game did too. Kinda sucks since the last few full levels felt like they hit their stride, but whatever. We're not done yet though, we still got multiplayer to tackle. Yeah, this game has a pretty sizable amount of multiplayer versus stuff that you can play, I guess. The main important thing is that you can play as every Decepticon you go against in the main story here, so rev up those tier lists. Megatron's pretty similar to Optimus, but can do more damage, but alternatively, he doesn't let you cancel your punches into an upgrade. Come on man, let me be cool. Starscream is second in line for being worst in the game because while he can hit hard, his combos feel super awkward, and instead of a laser blast, you have these missiles that are allergic to enemies. Dreadwing is really good mainly because he's not too different from the other characters. He just hits really hard with both combos and blasters, and doesn't really compromise his speed. Same can pretty much be said for Knockout, he just has faster combos and speed, and he can also shred through you when you're green, which is pretty much a constant for these last two characters as well. Soundwave differs in that his blasters are only good for close range when uncharged and firing a giant spread when they are charged, and he has really good combos even without upgrading. And Arachnid is pretty much the same, just with better damage. Her blasters always deal knockback, and funny helicopter. Yeah, all the Decepticons can go plane mode as you'd expect except Knockout, but Arachnid has the most controlling midair, which lets you easily camp people out with the horrible blaster accuracy. Picking her in the game is like picking Mega Knight in Brawl, you're an asshole. There's also 3 modes: Brawl, which devolves into happy slaps until one person dies, Energon Match, where each character gets or loses points by killing or being killed, and Emblem Battle, that's basically that Shine Sprite mode from Mario Kart. There's probably some fun to be had with this, but as you can imagine, nobody's playing Transformers Prime on Wii U with me, so I get to beat up the CPUs. Weirdly enough, despite there being an option to fight against 3 CPUs, there's no 4-player multiplayer, only 2. The multiplayer also has a couple emblems to get, with the only one I think is important is getting to do sudden death with 4 people in an arena, which was mainly hard just getting the computers to not kill each other until the timer runs out. Also, while playing multiplayer, my gamepad ran out of battery, so I used a Wiimote and nunchuck and found out the controls are severely neutered since you have no heavy attack button, meaning no alternate combos, and having to go vehicle mode to do your shield breaker, and your standard attack is done by shaking the Wii remote, which is about as fun as it sounds. After that, I got all the emblems, which meant I fully completed the game, and doing so gets you some pretty neat concept art and behind the scenes stuff in the gallery. There's some really nice looking pieces in here, even a video showing the production process of one of the TV episodes. Very neat stuff. Now, that could have been the end of things, but I saw this little tidbit on the Transformers wiki that said there was exclusive content in the DS version, and well, I just couldn't help myself. Honestly, for what it's worth, the DS version is good. It manages to give you pretty much the same experience as the console version, but now with all the models put in a blender. It's kinda cute, honestly, like Transformers Prime for PS1. There's a lot of small changes to characters. I found the blasters to be a lot more accurate and do more damage, and when you play as Ratchet, he actually does damage comparable to the other characters. It's crazy. On the whole, everyone feels like they hit harder, especially on the standard enemies, which is only accentuated with the sound effects. You thought the models were the only thing chucked in the blender?
And I want you to listen to that crunch.
Jumps also aren't as stiff since there's no end lag once you land, and they also push the targeting system on you a lot more here. Originally, I only used it to prepare to shoot my gun, but here you press the button to lock on instead of needing to hold it, which makes it a lot more useful. The control isn't all good though, since you need to upgrade using the button on the bottom screen and nothing else. The level design's kinda the same, kinda different, like a lot of set pieces are still there, but a couple rooms are changed. Like in Bumblebee's first stage, there's still this setup of the 3 rooms with the generators and running to and from the elevator, but a lot of before this part is completely different. The level with the first Thunderwing fight has a different fight arena with these dark energon pools, but the escape at the end is the same. The only big level design change is in the 7th stage. Instead of going into a full level after the Megatron fight, there's an escape sequence only in this version that I actually kinda liked. Some of the boss fights are different too, and by that I mean they're for the most part worse. Starscream's fights let you beat him senseless since his first fight skips his flying around phase and lets you knock him off the pillars immediately, and you can stun lock him in his second fight. He can't even fly at me. The second Megatron fight is way worse since it's you beating him up for 2 seconds and then him sending enemies at you, and while we're at it, the Dreadwing fight also sucks because he's a real damage sponge. On the complete opposite end, Thunderwing's final fight is a lot better because it skips over the first phase with Optimus and starts on the run-up with RC and Jack, which makes the double health bar phase feel a lot less redundant. So yeah, I was pretty surprised. A pretty good port to a weaker system where a couple things, notably control stuff, are actually better than the console version, and it all gets topped off by that exclusive content. Can we please get the exclusive content from the DS version up on the screen, please? Well, black's a good color. Yeah, I ran through the whole thing and nothing, nada. Not like there's much else to do either, cause surprisingly, there's no artifacts and levels or any multiplayer mode, which seems like it would have been great for some DS download play. The only thing I can think of is that this special exclusive content is locked behind getting all S ranks, but I am not doing that. Getting 100% in one version is good enough for me, and even putting that aside, I'm not sure if I'm doing something wrong, but I barely got any S ranks here. When on Wii U, sometimes I got them by accident. It seems like you're only graded on time and damage taken, but it doesn't tell you the requirements even after you beat the stage, so whatever. I did a second playthrough for no reason. I hope that means something to you. That ends Transformers Prime on Wii U, and I guess DS while I was here. It's a pretty fun game, not crazy beat 'em up or anything, but if you're into Transformers stuff, it makes for a nice time. Helps this game isn't super long either, only 13 stages, which I think is a good length. If it went on any longer, I probably would have gotten bored of it and stopped enjoying myself. This game released at $50 on Wii U. Are you out of your mind? $50 for this, dude? I fully completed the game and I still got like 6 hours out of that, and it's not that crazy of a game for it to be full price. I mean, this doesn't mean that much nowadays, because let me remind you, I got this for $12, but still, imagine if you bought this at launch. That'd suck. In the future, I might come back to some Transformers games. I hear the Cybertron games are good, and I have played Transformers Autobots, and let me just say, this game is bad. But that's for another day. With that, I hope you enjoyed the video, take care, and I will see you all later.